Hello everybody! So later in the week I'm going to hopefully teach you how to paint some of these paintings. I'm even going to repaint this big boy. But today we're going to learn how to paint this gorgeous realistic water acrylic painting. So let's get into it. So we're going to use a little bit more colours than the previous tutorial. We're going to use titanium white, cad yellow, cad red, cerulean blue, phthalo green, phthalo blue, ultramarine blue, dioxazine purple and burnt umber. Now I have a canvas that I painted phthalo blue because I was painting a painting and it kind of went wrong. So I just painted it phthalo blue. You don't have to, you can start on a white canvas. But all I'm going to do, I'm going to mix some white and some phthalo blue to get this colour. I'm going to add phthalo green to turn it more green, some burnt umber brown to turn it more grey and neutralise the colour. See how it turns it more grey? Some cerulean blue, which is a light blue, just to make it lighter. And I've got red to turn it a bit more warm, and that turns it a bit more purpley grey, as you can see. And all I'm going to do is on the top of my canvas, I'm going to paint a lighter colour. So the reason I'm painting a lighter colour at the top of my canvas is because the sun is going to be shining down from a nice blue sky. So I want a nice sort of pastel blue, and I want it to be at the top of the painting looking like the sun is shining down on the water. Now, as I say, you don't have to paint on a manky canvas like me. I'm reusing a canvas because I hate to waste things. So I like to just reuse canvases if anything goes wrong. So I'm just adding some more phthalo blue. I'm going to add some red to turn it more purpley, some phthalo green and some burnt umber to turn it more realistic like a sea colour. A tiny bit of white because I want it slightly darker than the previous colour. And all I'm going to do, look, we're slightly darker. We've got a little bit more phthalo blue to turn it more blue. And all we're doing is we're just gently blending it into the previous colour while it's still wet. So I'm just going back and forth with my brush. And what this is going to do is going to create the illusion that the water is getting deeper and darker as it moves towards the bottom of the canvas. So as I say, you can just use a white canvas at home. You don't have to paint it phthalo blue. But what we want to do is just gently blend so our transitions look really seamless, so you don't really notice the jump in colour. So as I say, we're getting darker as we go down into the painting. So we're going to have more phthalo blue, a little bit of red, a little bit of phthalo green and a little bit of burnt umber brown. So phthalo green and burnt umber brown gives the sea that beautiful sort of like in between sort of blues. I'm just adding a tiny bit of cerulean blue in between blues and greens. It gives this more realistic look. It's quite grey. So by adding little bits of red to neutralise your colours, and by adding things like brown to suck out a bit of the vibrancy in the colours, you wouldn't normally think of that without watching a tutorial. It just gives your paint recipes, your colour mixing, a really realistic tone. So all we've done, look, we've got darker as we've gone down, and I've dried my painting. So please dry your painting with a hairdryer. And we're going to use chalk. Now the reason I'm going to show you why I'm using chalk is just because if you are at home and you are a beginner, it's quite daunting doing something on canvas for the first time. So chalk takes that pressure off you. So what I like to do is create these sort of squashed little triangles, and these are my waves. And the reason I use chalk is if anything goes wrong, I can just literally make it wipe it away, and it was like it was never there. So look, this is my demonstration of a triangle. But what I kind of want you to do is kind of make a triangle and then have little sort of like squashed diamond shapes, if that kind of makes sense. So look, all I'm doing is kind of creating a triangle, and then I'm having little bits, look, come off from it. See how I did that? So I have a triangle to start with, and then I just have little bits to come off with. And then we can get some of our phthalo blue and some burnt umber brown, a little bit of yellow, some white, and we should make a very dark bluey grey. We've got to load up a flat brush. I'm just going to add a little bit yellow to turn it more green, so it looks more like the sea. There we go. So we've got a very dark version of phthalo green, basically. And look, all you have to do now is go over your waves. So if you find ever like you're planning a painting and you don't want to commit to it, you can always use chalk. It's a great way, by having a dry canvas, to plan your painting. So I use it all the time. I get loads of children's chalk and I just literally just draw what I want to do, and then I literally just go over it, and it's like it was never there. Look, it's perfect. So what we kind of want to do is we want to have these sort of middle sort of shaped triangles in the middle, and then as we come down in the painting, I'm going to make them slightly larger and wider. Look, they're bigger triangles. Think boom. So what I'm trying to do is create the illusion of perspective, that the things that are close to the viewer look bigger, and as we go up, we're going to make these triangles flatter and more squashed together, so they look like they're fading off into the distance. So all I'm doing, look, I'm making these lines and my triangles look more squashed, and they're closer together as well, so they're not as far apart, so they look like they're sort of squeezed together. Take your time, use the flat edge of the brush. It's so much easier to use a flat brush. So now on the last sort of top third of the painting, we're going to do less triangles and almost flat lines. We're going to have slight little scoops in them, just so they don't look really boring. But all we're going to do, look, we're just using the flat edge of that brush. We're squashing them all together, so they're not as big as the bottom. We're getting nice and squashed. So think of a sandwich, like we're kind of squashing the two slices of bread together. So there we go. And it should start to trick your eyes and make it look like the waves are fading off into the distance. How cool is that? And then look, as you go up, my lovely camera is having a whinge and going out of focus. Seeing I'm so professional. And it's almost like I've barely got any paint on my brush. So I'm going to zoom in for you so it's a bit more in focus. And I'm going to get a small brush, look. And then what you can do, look, is so much easier to just do really thin, spindly lines with a small brush. So again, you don't have to spend a fortune on brushes, just use the right ones. And all I'm doing, look, I'm smudging it with my finger to give it a less harsh look. Because things that are far off into the distance are really soft and out of focus. A bit like my camera. So you want them to look kind of blurry. So by softening them up, by just giving them a smudge with your finger. If you feel uncomfortable about using a clean finger, you could always wear sort of washing up gloves. I had a message in the comment asking if it's safe to do this. Well, acrylics, I would say yeah, but oil paints, I wouldn't do this because oils have lots of chemicals and things. But saying that, everything has something in it, and I wouldn't really know. But to be on the safe side, look, I'm just speeding it up. All I'm doing is just doing little blobs. If they're harsh, look, I just smudge them. But if you feel a bit wary about using your finger, you can always just wear gloves. So all I want you to do is to do that to the top of the canvas. And as I say, the more out of focus and the more blurry you get, the better. Because then it looks like they're fading away. Yay! And then all I want you to do is to start working on the bottom bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to make our darkest darks darker. So we're going to get some phthalo blue, and we're going to add burnt umber to it and some yellow to make a very dark phthalo green. So look, by just adding white, we can just turn it a little bit lighter. Now, acrylics always dry darker, but the trick with acrylics, if you want to make something look better and make it look either brighter, darker, you have to go over them twice. So I really want to make my darkest darks darker. So what I want to do is I want to go over them, because the thing with acrylics, unlike oil paints, they dry a bit flat. So when you're laying the paint, it's all glossy. Look, it looks all shiny. You think, oh, good, I'm really cool. And all my paint looks really expensive and great. And then it dries. And it doesn't look the same. So there's a trick. And the trick is, it's a bit repetitive and a bit boring. But this is the difference between someone who's very good and someone who's a beginner. By just going over your work once or twice, it brings out colours, it makes everything darker and look more professional. So all I'm doing, look, I'm going round areas that I want to highlight. I want this bottom left corner a little bit darker because I'm going to sign my signature in the corner. So I want a dark colour to make it shine up. But also, if you imagine, these waves are the closest to the viewer. They're really close. So imagine we're sitting on a boat looking out into the distance. These waves are going to be really close to us. So by making them darker, it makes them look nearer. And again, look, you can swap to a smaller brush. You can put in little divots with a smaller brush, which makes your life a bit easier. But all I'm trying to do, look, I'm just trying to rework areas. I'm still giving that colour that's underneath a little bit of a gap. So that colour, look, I'm just going over it again with that same colour as we used previously. So it creates kind of like a hum around the dark blue. And the reason I'm doing that is because all water is really feminine and soft. I don't want really big jumps in colour. So by going back and just using the previous colour, I can just link areas together. And look, I can just smooth every area. So if I've got any really sharp lines, I don't really want that. I want everything to be really round and curvy. So think of water. You don't see any right angles or sharp lines. Everything's kind of like round and really pretty. And this is another trick, is using a fine liner and creating sort of loops, circles and divots, and even outlining your ripples. This will create the illusion of realism. So what I like to do is I like to put a bit of water on my brush, and then look, the brush sort of flows on the rough canvas really smoothly. So if you find that when you're painting around your circles and your ripples that the paint kind of breaks, just dip your little brush in some water, just a little bit, just to wet it, and you'll find it will glide on the canvas, and look, it will just be so much smoother. So all I'm going to do, look, I'm going to do this quite a lot, so I'm just going to speed up the footage. So as I say, it's not hard, it's just repetitive. And a lot of people find it difficult, especially in today's area, to master the mundane, as they would say. As in, think of like Michael Jordan or a footballer or Tiger Woods or whoever it is. They do the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that. So, as I say, there's fair enough you're watching a little tutorial, but doing it and actually spending the time, look, just doing these little divots and stuff, that is what is creating the realism. There's no super quick hack, there's no cheat code. It's just being patient and taking your time. Now obviously I've got the videos sped up a little bit. The whole painting took me probably about an hour and 10 minutes, an hour and 20 minutes, and I'm condensing this down for half an hour for you. But as I say, you can just pause the video. YouTube is fantastic. You can even change the speed, so you can have me going like a chipmunk and going really fast, or you can have it going really slow like a stoner. So you can listen, and you can obviously change the speed, so go at your own pace at home. So look, all I'm doing, I'm just doing that. And as I say, some of the areas you think, oh wow, I've done it, it looks really, really good. Again, sometimes you have to go over it again, make it even darker. That is just the bummer with acrylics. Everything has a yin and yang in life, so everything has a positive, but of course you always get a negative. So think of acrylics, they're really cheap, they're really forgiving, like just like my canvas, I can just paint over it in 5 minutes once it's dry and do a whole new painting. The problem is they don't look as realistic as oils. They don't have the same sheen, which makes them look shiny and realistic. They dry a bit flat. So they're perfect for like sort of people starting out, but they are, as I say, you do have to sometimes go over them again. So all I've done, look, I've just made a darker version of the previous colour. I've got my little brush and I've put this on fast forward because obviously I'm not going to get you to sit here for 20 minutes while I did this. But I went over it again. And what I was doing was I was linking areas a bit more. So I'm trying to make the waves sort of seamless, where they sort of link together a little bit more. And as I say, I'm making my darkest darks darker by going over them. So with acrylics, sometimes, because if you think we've got the underpainting underneath and we're painting over the top, or the water in the acrylic paint binds to the colour underneath, and it, as I say, it sort of merges. You don't get really a darkest dark. So by going over the top of it, just makes all the difference, honestly. And it's the same with whites and bright highlights. I'll show you in a minute when we do the sparkles. If you find that your painting, when you first do it and you put these beautiful white sparkles on, are a bit naff, they dry a bit flat and they don't look as nice, again, just go over them again. So as I say, there's nothing hard. It's just repetitive. It's just a bit boring. So look, all I'm doing, I'm just adding a little bit dark ripples every so often with my brush, just to give it a bit more definition so it's less flat. And it's looking really cool so far. And I think when I'm happy with it, which I am kind of now, I will move on to the sparkles. So we are going to create beautiful glowing sparkles, and we're going to put the glow on first to create like a light effect. So we're going to get some cerulean blue, some red to make it more grey. Look at that, that looks lovely. And we're going to get loads of white to make it look pastel and look like the sky is kind of reflecting down onto the water. So again, acrylics always dry darker than you think, so add plenty of white. Don't be shy. Add that white, because as I say, it's better to go lighter and you can always go over it again. And what we're going to do, look at the top, we're just going to go quite flat and just trying to create sort of lines. And this is going to be the sort of sunlight shining down onto the water. And then I'm going to zoom in for you so you can see it, because I'm a bit zoomed out. And I appreciate not everyone's got hawk-like vision. So you might want to see it a bit closer. So there we go. So look, all I'm doing, I'm trying to go in between our lines. So I'm using, the great thing is we've got those lines already in place. So I can just go around them and I can smudge it with my finger to soften it up again. And it should start to look like shimmer in our ocean waves. So look, you can make areas look brighter by pushing down hard and you'll get lots of paint. And you can even go round your ripples, look. And I can soften it up. So it's the same techniques. And then as we come down, look, if I push really hard, I get quite a lot of paint come out. So I want the middle to be quite bright because that's where I want the viewer to look. So I'm going around my ripples, I'm pushing down hard with my brush, and we've got this lovely sort of pastel colour. And I'm just letting it fade out. Look, I'm just smudging it as it comes to either side. If I've got, look, a big jump, I just soften it up with my brush. Because I don't want any big jumps in colour. I want everything to look like feminine, as I say, natural. So look, just soften areas. We're just creating that lovely sort of shimmer effect. Now, if you find this tutorial is a little bit more advanced and hard, if you find you're struggling with it, obviously we've made 2 previously, so I'm going to put them on the screen now. So there was the original one, which was just water and sparkles. And then there's a little bit more advanced one, which was a sunset one with waves and water refraction with using sunset colors. Now this one is the 3rd video, and as I say, it's a little bit more advanced than the previous 2. So if you find you're struggling a little bit, you can always go back. I'm trying to make a series for everyone. And as I say, we're going to go into more advanced techniques. But the great thing is we're going to have lots of videos. I've created tons of playlists for you. So you can binge and you can learn anything you want. Any ideas for videos? What was so great about the previous video, it's doing fantastic. So thank you so much to everyone who's watched it and liked it and shared it. Thank you so much. But all the people who were putting ideas, thank you even more, because this channel is for you guys. So if there's anything you would like to learn, please put it in the comments below and I'll hopefully cover it in future tutorials. So look, all I'm doing, I'm just trying to spread it out. But can you see, look, if I push down in the middle, I get a big lots of paint. Can you see even now, we only laid this paint, what, a minute and a half ago? It's already starting to fade out a little bit. It looks cool, don't get me wrong. But that paint is starting to absorb the paint underneath. Oh, my camera's going a bit drunk. So I had a few too many beers this morning. So let's just fade it out either side. So I'm just using my brush. I've got no paint basically. So look, by going over it twice, as I say, it's repetitive, but that is the nature of the beast. So all I'm doing, look, I've got barely any paint and I'm just hardly pushing down on the areas I want to cover. If it's too harsh, look, I can smudge it with my finger. And the areas in the middle, look, I'm going to push down hard because I want a second coat of thick paint to give that shimmer. And all I'm doing, look, I'm just coming away from the middle. But when I lighten things up, I push harder. But it's starting to look really realistic already. So look, all around here with the ripples, we're just going to go round. We're going to continue what we were doing. Because once we put the sparkles and we put some highlights over the top, it is going to look proper real. And you got to remember as well, we're zoomed in on a 4K high definition camera. So we are looking cool, but it does show all the imperfections of the painting. It does make it look a little bit scruffy because we are so zoomed in. And obviously this painting's not been varnished, it's not been framed, but I'm telling you now, if you saw this painting when we finish from across the room, it will look real, because it will trick your eyes and it will make it look incredibly real. So as I say, when you're zoomed in and you have these fantastic cameras and everything, it does show everything. If you zoomed in on my face, you'd see all my pimples and hairs and all these things you don't want to see. So sometimes, as I say, like, people beat themselves up, but take a step back from your painting when you finish. Look at it. I'm sure you'll be happy and shocked how good it looks with very little effort. So look, we have got the shimmer. We have got the glow down. So now we're going to get an even lighter colour. So we're just going to add tons of white to our blue. We still want a hint of that blue in the colour. Because why we're doing this? We're doing this because when we add the pure titanium white at the end, we'll have this lovely light blue glow around it, and it'll soften it and it'll make everything look really real. So all I'm going to do, look, I'm just going to create blobs. Now if you smudge them with your finger, that's cool, but it kind of takes away the sort of impression. So what I want you to do, look, is just create little circles that just go round and round with your brush. And just spread it push down hard and just spread blobs, and that should create the effect of smudging it with your finger but not take away all the paint. So just push down hard. I'm using a round-headed brush, which just means the end of the brush is round rather than flat. And I just find it easier to create circles with it because the head of the paintbrush is already a little circle. So all I'm doing, I'm trying to be strategic. I'm just trying to put these blobs just in places that I think the shimmer. But if you can kind of notice, I'm never really putting them on the shadow areas. I'm only putting them on the bits of the waves that are not dark, if that makes sense. So any area that's got the dark blue, I'm not putting them. Look, I'm putting them on the lighter sides. Occasionally I might put a blob and it might kind of go into one of the dark areas. But I kind of want it on the areas that are in the light. And then as I go up, just like our waves, I want to make them more flat. So I'm just trying to do these blobs as they come down. And we can have blobs coming away from the middle. Look, that looks really cool and realistic. But I do want the ones in the middle to look quite flat. And it should look like shimmer. So look, as we go in the middle, I want it quite flat. And then we can have our little blobs coming from either side. And I'm going to make the middle just a little bit thin. So it looks again like it's fading out into the distance. So let's load up my brush. And let's do this. This is a really cool trick. Get a really thin brush, and on some of your ripples, just do some really sharp highlights, little circles. And again, so think of if you were sitting on the boat looking out into this beautiful ocean. You're on holiday, you've got a cocktail, you've got a nice hat and plenty of sunscreen on, some sunglasses. You're living the life, living your best life. Well, all the things in focus, look, would have little ripples and sharp highlights. So just the ones really close to you would look sparkling and beautiful. So we kind of want to create that. So by just having these lovely sharp highlights just on the ones in focus, because we don't want to do it in the far off ones because that will bring it closer towards the viewer. We want it to look like it's fading away. So the great thing about being an artist is you notice things that people take for granted. You pay attention because you're grounded and you're very present a lot. You sit there and you get out of your mind and you just look at stuff. And the nice thing about looking at stuff is you notice all these little things that people don't notice, but that creates the realism. So all I'm doing now, straight out the tube, just using pure titanium white. And I'm using my manky old brush that I love. And I'm just creating sparkles. Now this is a cool trick. You can create cross shapes. So all I'm doing, I'm just creating a cross kind of from a middle. So some of them I'm creating into little sparkles. And the great thing is now, because you've got that sort of light blue hum, now when you put these whites over the top, it should look extra vibrant and make it look much more realistic. So if I zoom in for you so you can see how much that white looks really, really vibrant because it's got the light blue hum around it. So as I say, just like earlier when I was having a bit of a whinge about the darks, and sometimes it could be a bit demoralizing when you lay down a paint and then you have to redo it. Well, sometimes that's the same with the whites. Like if you lay the white down, it's going to absorb some of that light blue from underneath. So if you have to go over it twice, you have to go over it twice. It's just, again, a bit of a sucky thing with acrylics. But look, if you use a really thin brush, I've got a really elongated long tip brush. And then look, all I'm doing is creating a little cross. So think of a cross. And I'm only doing it on a few. but it really, really brings the painting to life. It creates sparkles. It looks really pretty. And I think she's finished. So I've signed her on the left. I've got her on a lovely easel. So you've learned how to do big waves in the foreground, your darkest darks, and little waves that are squashed together to create distance and perspective. You've learned how to put your shimmer over the top, and then how to blend that, put highlights, and then how to put your sparkles over the top. So thank you so much for watching this realistic water acrylic painting. I hope it's really, really helped you. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you find the channel and the tutorials useful, and I will put many more on in the next couple of weeks. So thank you very much. Happy painting, everyone, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Take care. Bye.